I'd like to call this meeting of the Planning Board to order. If everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes, April 4th, 2024. We'll defer those to a future meeting. The next item on the agenda is the possible extension or abandonment of applications pursuant to Town Code 2639-17M, Building 920 Associates LLC.
So that was on the ZBA's agenda on Tuesday. They did receive their variances. We are going to suggest that they be listed on your agenda for May 2nd. So you can extend the time frame within which to act till then if the owner doesn't have an objection.
Until May 2nd.
Yes.
Any comments or concerns from the board? Not, can I have a motion to extend their approval till May 2nd?
Deadline within which to make a determination.
Yes.
Until May 2nd.
That was easy for you to say. Until May 2nd, 2024.
I'll make the motion.
Marty, second by Eric. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Next item on the agenda is the Golden State Inn Primrose Realty LLC, 12-1-56. We have an application for a site plan special permit, lodging facility on 8.6 plus or minus acres along New York State Route 17M, HC and CO zones, AQ6 overlays, and we're here tonight to discuss the water testing protocol. Tom, welcome.
Good evening. It's been a while for me to be from the planning board.
Just introduce yourself.
So I'm Tom Cusack, I'm Vice President of WSP. I'm the Senior Supervising Hydrogeologist. A little bit about my experience. I have 40 years of experience practicing hydrogeology. I was a consultant for the Orange County Water Authority when they were an authority, like J. Beaumont. I have consulted for a significant number of municipalities in Orange County, including the town of Goshen for several years, village of Goshen. I have developed over 80 million gallons of public drinking water supplies in my career so far. So I'm here to discuss the recharge component that I understand. I have responded to in multiple responses, and I'm here to clarify any questions that you may have. But let's start off with the basics. The water demand for the project is 6.7 gallons per minute. And there was a request to have Orange County concur on that water demand, and we have provided documentation that Orange County has concurred with that water demand, the 6.7. Under your guidelines, we were required to test the well at twice the average water demand, which is 12.1 GPM. So that's our target rate during the pump test. So now I'm going to get into the recharge.
So 6.7 is actually 6.05.
I'm sorry, it's 6.7 is the water demand, average water demand. Yes, you're correct. So twice that. Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I just jump in?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so I just want to put just frame it for the board, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
So this was last before you last year. At that time, the applicant completed the part 2. They're looking to move on to the part 3. That part 3 is going to include some water testing. In May of 2023, they had submitted a water testing plan that was reviewed by the town's hydrologist. There were some comments, and right now the applicant's responding to the comments. So that's where you are in this process. I think ultimately the applicant is looking for your authorization on the well testing so they can proceed with testing, and they would incorporate that testing in a response to the part 3.
Thank you. Tom.
Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to get into a comment that was reoccurring comment to respond to, which is the recharge evaluation. We call it water budget evaluation. And we always, try to clarify the water budget analysis when we talk about it, is that it's a desktop evaluation. So it's basically applying recharge evaluations directly to the property and to the watershed, basically. So what we have basically reviewed is the watershed, the direct watershed to the site, and that is limited. When we say direct watershed, that means any upland setting to the site. Groundwater flows from high to low, so that would be probably the tightest watershed area. Beyond that, there is the regional watershed, meaning a very much larger watershed area. But we want to focus conservatively on the direct watershed area. That was determined to be 47.3 acres. And we basically determined that under average recharge conditions, the recharge would be 29,500 gallons per day. And under drought conditions, it would be approximately 20,400 gallons per day. And certainly under the drought conditions of 20,400, the water demands are basically, average water demands are 8,700 gallons per day. So there's a significant amount of surplus water if you consider just the drought conditions. To respond to a prior response regarding the recharge evaluation, I was requested to do a build-out analysis within the direct watershed area. And so basically, it encompassed a couple of homes on Rolling Ridge subdivision, and then 2 additional parcels listed here. And reviewing the build-out analysis and the associated water demands, we also made the assumption that, well, it is the assumption that it's the existing, that these would be on sewer, basically. If you look at, septic. If you look at the zone, it'd be on septic. So 80% of the consumed water within those out parcels would be recharged back into the aquifer via the septic system. So we call that consumptive water use. So the overall consumptive water use of the build-out within those 2 parcels is approximately a little over 1,200 gallons per day. So if you add back 1,200 to the 8,800 gallons per day consumption for the hotel, we're talking about an overall consumptive water use, let's just say just under 10,000 gallons per day. Again, that is significantly less than the recharge under drought conditions of a little over 20,000. But you have to understand that that's just a desktop evaluation. How we determine whether the proposed well can sustain a yield of 12.13 gallons a minute, twice the average water demand, we conduct a 72-hour pump test. And during that pump test, the pumping well level has to stabilize within a certain criteria. And if it stabilizes in that criteria, then that yield can be sustained. Second evaluation is when we turn the well off, is evaluating the recovery of the well, meaning the fact that the well would have to recover within a certain period of time. That is what is used to determine whether the yield is sustainable and the magnitude of offsite impacts, because we're monitoring wells within the surrounding area. That is the conclusion. The desktop evaluation, in my professional opinion, has no real significant merits. And that is supported by the fact that the regulatory agencies do not use recharge in proving a water taking of a particular project or a municipality, what we call a taking of water from the ground. Water budget analysis not utilized. The critical component is the pump test and the offset monitoring, which clearly documents whether the yield is sustainable and if the magnitude of any offset impacts, if any. I think, if any of you sitting here have a well on your property, if your home is supplied by a well, your water, the water that comes into that well, comes from beyond your property boundaries. It's not limited to what is within your property boundary. It comes from what is recharged within the regional aquifer. So you really can't define the ultimate recharge and sustainability of a well from the property boundaries and the recharge directly to the property boundary.
What we do need to consider, and you did consider in the analysis, the zoning analysis, is the fact that other parcels can be developed and are entitled to water as well.
Yeah.
So we don't want to be drawing it down, even though we can pull the water and not impact other wells 3 or 4 or 5 wells that we might be monitoring, we want to make sure there's adequate supply so when somebody goes in to develop in accordance with the zoning, that they would have available water too. One question I have, and this has come up before, the topography of the site is, the grade is such that a lot of the rainwater that would hit it would run right, surface water flow right down the property and not necessarily infiltrate. Do you see any impact with that as far as the analysis?
No, because I think the recharge is not limited, it's not really, the recharge to the site is a component of the recharge from the groundwater withdrawal fleet. But in my opinion, it's the direct watershed. And I would have to say the recharge to the overall area is even beyond the direct recharge area, meaning it's regional. So, we have to look at things, I would have to say we look at things more regionally. However, I think very conservatively, we define a very direct watershed area to it with the build-out analysis. And I think, Lee, to address the concerns of, sustainability and the impacts, I understand this as a concern in the approval process. So my job is to get not 3 wells, offsite monitoring wells, Lee. My job is to get a very good representation of wells within the surrounding area, so we can really characterize it and get beyond the paper study and really have the science behind it.
How far out is reasonable?
1,500 feet.
1,500?
Yes. And in some areas, we're extending, Bill had requested that we do a fracture trace analysis, so in some areas, we extend that beyond the 1,500 feet. But the water demand is 6.7 GPM. I've been doing this a long time. I don't really expect there to be significant offset. I've done a lot of pump tests in my career. 6.7 GPM, which is now twice. At 12 GPM, 13, I don't expect there to be significant impacts. And so you have to understand, we're stressing the aquifer. We're pumping at twice the average water demand for 3 days straight. The well will never pump 3 days straight. The 72-hour pump test is really stressing the aquifer. And so that's why I'm comfortable in saying it's the pump test that's going to demonstrate the sustainable yield of the well and having a very strong representation of offsite monitoring wells, which this board will approve, or the office. We always submit our plans before we conduct the test that we'll submit to Sean. These are the number of homes that we're monitoring. And my job is to have a really solid, to come to the table with a solid program. We knock on doors, we send letters, some people don't respond. We always make multiple efforts, so we always come back with who's ever was willing to participate.
You have to make that best effort.
And the DEC's, I've been doing this a long time, the DEC's things, well, it's their problem if they don't have their well monitored, But my job is to make multiple attempts. And then we give you a history of the dates that we went, who we contacted, and the response. And then sometimes we submit a plan, we have in the past, and Bill has commented, fill in this area, and then we solicit. So I look at that as the approach here. We've done a lot of these. I've done probably 25, 30 of these pump tests under the town's protocol.
You have something to add?
I do.
Please.
If you would be good enough to explain the significance of the following. It's stated that the average water demand is equal to more or less 8,700 gallons per day.
Yeah.
And the annual on-site recharge is 5,400 gallons per day.
Yes.
Is it?
That's correct.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
That's about right.
Can you explain the significance of there being a greater demand than the average recharge rate?
Yes, so that's basically defining the recharge within the property boundaries.
Okay.
However, the recharge to the site is not restricted to the property boundaries. It basically comes from the direct recharge area, and that's what I have defined is the direct recharge area. And beyond the direct recharge area, there's a much larger regional recharge area. A good example, municipal well that's on a 10-acre parcel and produces 200 gallons a minute. It's not restricted because of the recharge within the property boundary itself. It's not a defining restriction in an aspect of the regulatory agency. It's not a consideration in the safe yield analysis. The pump test is what really defines the safe yield and the magnitude of offset impact.
So, maybe you can help me out here, Sean. Given the fact that there's greater demand on-site and there is recharge on-site, do we run the risk of adverse drawdown on adjacent properties?
That is the entire reason that they're going through this analysis.
Full
Right?
zoning analysis.
It was recognized that they had greater withdrawal than can be recharged to the area. So in accordance with Bill Canada's recommendation, what the applicant did was they studied this area of direct recharge. This is about 47 acres. They applied the zoning code to that 47 acres to figure out how much development could occur in that area. And then they made a determination as to the overall demand and the overall recharge of that area. And within that whole study, 47, almost 50 acres, they are well in excess, frankly, especially considering some of the conservative assumptions they made in terms of zoning density. And even if you did not consider the consumptive demand, which is when the septic system replenishes the groundwater, you just look at the water demand itself, there still is adequate recharge in that overall 50-acre parcel or 50-acre area.
And what Tom was mentioning just a moment ago, you have a municipal well. All that needs to be owned around it is a 100-foot radius. Clearly, if a well's pulling 100 gallons a minute, or 200 gallons a minute, whatever it might be, it's pulling from more than 100-foot or 200-foot diameter, 100-foot radius. You're pulling from outside the ownership of that municipality. It could be all private lands. And that's the whole purpose of doing the on-site pump tests.
It's
Monitor
really,
those wells.
yeah, the pump test is really going to address the board's questions of whether the yield is sustainable and the magnitude of offset impacts. The desktop evaluation is just a desktop evaluation.
And with the monitoring of the off-site wells as well as the on-site well, you're looking at the water usage and drawdown before you even start your 72-hour pump test to see what the patterns are as far as use, so you could attribute any change to the pump test as opposed to the use on the property by the owner of that well.
And a pump test is for 72 hours continuous pumping, which really will not even come close to the use of the well. And it's really an act for stressor is what it is. You know? So we will certainly capture any impacts during that test event because of the magnitude of the stress, continuous pumping for 3 days straight. And that is the conclusion here, not the desktop evaluation.
Okay, thank you.
Sean?
Yeah, so there were three other items that Tom had hit on. One was that we wanted to confirm what water quality testing they would do. So we went to Orange County Department of Health. They had made a recommendation. We wanted them to confirm the water demand, which they've done. And then the last item, which Tom touched on, was the off-site monitoring. They're now, once you authorize them to proceed, they're going to solicit well monitoring, as you've heard. My only question to the board is whether you would want them to come back with that monitoring plan and see it yourselves, or if you would want Frank and I to handle that.
I personally feel that Sean and Frank can handle it.
I personally feel likewise.
I agree.
Agreed. Now, Sean, when you mentioned as far as going to the Department of Health, the one issue was that was being tested as a non-community water supply, but the recommendation was made to do the water quality test for a non-transient water supply. Was there a decision made on that as far as, because obviously there's a lot more extensive testing.
Yes. So I think our recommendation is going to be the cost is to me personally is insignificant. So my recommendation would be the full Part 5, but you know what I'm talking about. So, but in the aspect of just to let the board know, the water quality results are only good for a year. So if the use changed, you'd have to resample anyway. So I think it's half a dozen, one or the other.
When you say a year, I mean, we don't typically make them do it after a year.
Right. But I
Depends on
mean,
the test.
if it's a different uses, whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm going to strongly encourage the client. I'm assuming that's what we'll do. It's
To
the full
do.
Part 5. The full Part 5.
The full Part 5. This way,
Yeah.
down the road, should the population be such
Yeah.
that it's a non-transient, it doesn't have to be replicated,
Yeah,
the test.
yeah.
Okay.
So I agree with the recommendation.
Good.
I think it's insignificant net cost-wise, so I'm assuming the client's not going to.
It's a lot better than mobilizing, retesting again and going off-site.
But you know the labs lately, you heard about,
Yeah, because when you gotta do another 72-hour pump test, you're back off-site and doing all that other research ahead of time in advance again. Was that it, Sean? Those three items?
Yes.
Do we have other comments from the board, concerns that were not raised?
Do you have you identified the off-site wells that you're gonna test?
No, I've already started we started the solicitation. Bill Canavan approved the area that we're soliciting. It's in the pump test plan. It's a 1,500-foot radius and it extends beyond that.
All right, so Sean and Frank are gonna agree with the test protocols, I guess?
Yes.
But we'll get the results.
Absolutely, you're gonna get the results as part of part 3. So what I had asked you before in terms of the monitoring plan, so like they said, they're gonna solicit, they may not get, let's just say, for argument's sake, they don't get anybody to the west. We'd like to get a good picture of what's happening all around, so we would say, hey, can we re-solicit or maybe even go out a little further, just so we can get some sort of data from that general direction. And that's how that process works.
What we like is the radius, the areas is defined for solicitation. That's been defined and approved. What we'd like to see within that radius is a good representation, 360 degrees. We don't like to see a particular area that's missing, like to the west. So we like to spatially cut to here, to here, to here, and clockwise, and have. That's what we strive for. But again, if there's an area where neighbors talk, let's not have our wells monitored. That'll stop the project. If we can't monitor their wells, I've heard a lot of scenarios and why people do and why people don't. And unfortunately, with social media and people talking, it tends to get harder and harder and harder. So.
All right, thanks.
Other comments?
Will this test take into consideration any other potential applicants that are coming into the planning department?
Yeah, we're monitoring. We'll be
Like
monitoring.
next door is supposed to be?
Yeah, we're monitoring their wells. We got permission already from them. So yeah.
Neil, do you have anything?
I'm recused.
You're recused on this.
Thank you.
Okay. Giovanni? Okay. Kelly?
Just a motion to authorize to proceed, and then for Sean and Frank to approve the monitoring.
Could I have said motion?
I'll place a motion.
Diana, second by?
I'll second.
Seamus, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Thank you for your time and consideration.
Have a good
Thank you.
night.
Have a
Thanks.
good one.
Driving back to the Cape.
Enjoy. Okay. Next item on the agenda is Goshen Hospitality LLC, 10-1-56.2, 56.4. We have an application for a site plan and special permit for a hotel and restaurant complex on 63.3 plus or minus acres, which is the total holdings along Chichunk, 6.5 Station Road in the CO District with an AQ6, Scenic Road, floodplain and ponding and street corridor and reservoir overlay districts. And we're here tonight to hopefully conclude our discussions on the finding statement, the secret finding statement. Seamus is recusing himself, and who's stepping up for him? Giovanni, please.
Tanya, it's John first and James Sanderson. Got it. Okay. So while Gio's getting settled, I sent the board a wrong copy that didn't include any of the comments from last meeting, and then I corrected it and I made sure it was all redlined, so you also changes, even though I was trying to make it clean. I did have two additional revisions, but it's the same revision to mention to you, and that is under the traffic mitigations as well as under the traffic findings. I just scrolled past it. At the end of each of those sections, it talks about that all mitigation measures are subject to the review and approval of the appropriate permitting agencies. And then I added a sentence. So what I would like to add after that red line sentence is, if the appropriate permitting agency determines an above noted proposed mitigation measure / finding or a suitable alternative is not warranted or required, the project sponsor does not have to reapply to the planning board because the permitting agency with the jurisdiction on the matter has deemed it unnecessary.
Right, it's the same verbiage for both.
Same verbiage for both. I did speak with John Canning about it as well, so he put his stamp of approval on it. And so I don't know, before we get into the primary discussion of this tonight, if anybody had any additional modifications. I see two stickies. I didn't get one.
Two stickies. On page 4, we have the statement that starts, the need for additional hotel units was demonstrated by 3 significant projects. And I think somewhere in there, we need to just say, in the opinion of the applicant or sponsor. For that, and also, well, depending on what happens with the discussion on the 3 or 4 story hotel.
Right.
That again, it's their position as it's read into the final finding statement. It's not ours that the conclusion was 4-story hotels.
The need for the additional requirements.
The very top line, I think, is where it's really applicable.
The very top line says the applicant is seeking site plan approval and special use permit approval.
Somewhere in there, I think.
And then it says, in that middle of that paragraph, the need for the additional hotel units was demonstrated by 3 significant projects located in the vicinity that will attract visitors and tourists to the area.
So I think it's really, in your opinion,
I
that
think
those
you
projects.
just want to add, in the opinion of the Orange County Economic Development Director, because that's where we got the information from, and he did provide testimony, as well as Amanda Dana from the tourism. So if you want to say in their opinion, it's not our opinion, it's
That's fine as well.
Definition.
You know, I just don't want it to be our opinion, that's all.
correct. But I just want to
That's
make sure,
fine.
I want the record to reflect that it was not us saying it.
You're
It
just
was,
carrying their position.
an outside agency, you know.
Okay, so
That's
we
fine.
can add, in the opinion of the Orange County Economic Development Director, comma, the need for the additional hotel units.
Wait, does that address your concern?
That does for that one, yes. And then the only other item was just on page 33. The sentence, I'm not sure why it was underlined, but it says the project sponsor is required to make a fair share contribution to assist in implementing the following mitigation measures are required to be, it's a run-on. I think from are required to by the project sponsor should be deleted. 9 words. I think it reads.
My pages are different than yours, so you said fair share
The
and,
project sponsor is required to make a fair share contribution to assist in implementing the following mitigation measures
oh, okay.
to mitigate the project's traffic impacts. I think it should just be that and nothing more.
Yeah, it should. I think that was a change. I was thinking of switching the sentence around, but I decided apparently to do both.
In
Still
my
really
red
tough.
line, I think you had to remove.
No.
No, that's an add. That red line would be underlined. That would have been added.
Yeah, I
It
added
wasn't
it.
stricken.
Sorry. It's gone,
It would
it's
be stricken
gone.
right through otherwise. That's all I had.
Okay, so then the big thing that the board is here tonight to discuss is 4 stories versus 3 stories. As you know, and we discussed at your last meeting, the 4 stories is the applicant's preferred proposed plan. So you need to determine whether or not you believe that's been mitigated to the extent practical. And if not, 3 stories, has that been mitigated to the extent practical? And the architectural drawings and that the comparison, which everybody thought that you had, but it was given to the ZBA, was emailed out, so everybody had all of that documentation since the last meeting to review.
Sean, we can start with you before I open up to the board.
I don't have any
Nothing?
comments on it.
Okay. In that case, we'll start with Diana.
Since I wasn't here at the last meeting, can you explain to me why do we want to go from 4 to 3? What happens to those extra rooms?
Apparently, from what I understand, it's the same number of rooms. The footprint changes on each of the 3 hotels, which would then, it impacts the visibility, you know, in a positive way by reducing the elevation.
Right.
It increases the footprint, the impervious surface, and perhaps some of the,
We did a comparison,
yeah,
and
the
Jane
fill-
can
the
summarize it.
fill.
So the information Jane is summarizing, everything was in the FEIS, but for the zoning board, what she did is she put together a table comparing everything, and I think it'll help you understand why the four-story is, you know, it could in some sense be better for the environment.
Right, so,
Yeah, so if you could just go through.
go through the letter? Yeah,
Please.
sure,
Mhm.
of course. So, on the letter, we described 6 different things that we could comparatively or quantitatively measure and compare between the 2 alternatives. So, between the proposed plan, which is the 4-story, and then the zoning compliant, the 3-story, the total disturbance area for the proposed is 16.6 acres. For the zoning compliant, it's 17.8. So there's an additional 1.2 acres of disturbance by having the 3-story, because instead of going up to have those 300 rooms, we're going out. So we have to disturb more area to build those hotels. That in turn reduces your open space by the same amount, 1.2 acres. The impervious surfaces are increased by about the same amount, 1.1 acre. The earthwork involved increases by 18,000 cubic yards. The building footprint goes from 49,000 square feet up to 72,000 square feet. So that's an increase of almost 50%, so 23,386 square feet of additional building footprint. And then in addition to that, the building surface area, so if you think about your windows and doors and wall space, there's an additional 14,000 square foot of heat loss area in your building. So it's more costly to heat the building because you have more space for it to lose your heat. So those were the things that we could measure. The other things that we did not specifically measure were, where did it go now? There would be more, because you have more impervious area, your stormwater ponds would get larger. The visual impacts don't really change because you can see the 3-story and the 4-story, and neither of them go above the tree line in the background. And then the other sort of additional reason that we're asking for the for meeting the height variance is because we want to be able to use peaked roofs rather than the flat roof alternative, which we could, technically go to. Those renderings were in your packet, and I don't know about you, but I think the flat roof alternative looks awful.
I agree with you on that.
Okay, we can agree on that.
Now, you mentioned as far as the facade being basically the same as far as visibility. I mean, up on the top of the hill against the tree line, yeah, I mean, whether it's 4-story or 3-story, it's below the top of the trees. But in the foreground, looking at it from 17, or Chichuk, that's where the 4-story versus the 3-story is more noticeable. In looking at the renderings, the facades were different, as far as how things were changed, as far as where you would drive through to register, as far as the overhang, or, it looked like there were more rooms, because you have parking on either side of the bump outs on 2 of the hotels.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's further extension to drive through under cover to register, drop off your luggage. That was one question I had. And then, the facades didn't seem to match up exactly with the footprint on the plan view that showed the footprint of the buildings. It was a little bit different. And I don't know if that was just intended to be representative and not exactly the same in terms of the configuration of the hotel. you know, I'm going with the four-story, the buildings tended to be more rectangular. Going with the three-story, they were more shaped like a T. You know, you had the,
Yes.
Right.
bumped
well,
out.
Right, we had to make them a T
It
shape.
it added a little interest to it. It changed the whole parking configuration,
Yes.
for
yes,
sure,
it
especially
doesn't-
in the one hotel that parallels Cheechuk.
Yes,
uh,
yeah, there's no
as far as the flow of
circulation
traffic.
around them.
Right.
Yeah.
But I will open it up to the board for their comments.
In that area, I would think that it would be more aesthetically pleasing to have a three-story rather than a four. Have you looked at the possibility of, and this is just off the top of my head, of maybe mixing a four-story and a three and a four, or a three and a three and a four in the middle or something to make it look more?
I don't know that you considered that.
I know it's more work, but just,
Yeah,
If
I
you
mean,
had, like, the
honestly,
threes
if
on the
we have to
side.
go to the zoning board, I think we would just go ask for all 3 hotel variances. You know, at this point, the client wants to kind of move forward, and we're just looking for direction from your board. If you're okay with the 4 stories, great, he'd be more than happy. If it's 3 stories, that's fine too. You know, we're just kind of looking for some direction so we can move forward. And I don't think he would go try to seek a variance for 1 or 2, because, you know, I kind of mentioned that before when I was before the zoning board as a possibility. I think at this point, I think he just wants to move forward.
I think the three-story would make more sense in that area, would look nicer.
Giovanni?
I feel the same. I feel the same way. I think the changes that are required in the footprint are minimal when you spread it all over the entire site, and I think a code compliant 3-story hotel or hotels plural would be a much more amenable situation in that area.
Marty?
You mentioned a difference of 18,000 cubic yards of material for the 3 stories. Is that going out or coming in, or just?
That would be going out because we have to cut more into the hillside to create that space.
And in the rendering, some of them, they have, looks like one of the floors is below grade in the front, or in the back, and above, you know, at grade in the front.
Yeah, the hotels 1 and 2, the 2 closest to Cheechuk Road, are built into the hillside. So the building wall is sort of used as a retaining wall.
So if one of the floors is below grade in the back, are we considering that a 3 or 4 story?
So it's 4-story, it's still 4-story, even if it's built in. It looks like it's 3-story on the backside.
Yes.
Correct, yes, but it's still considered a 4-story.
All right.
Yep,
And it's
Because
based on
whether it's 3 stories or
definition.
4 stories, it's got to be built into the side of the hill.
correct.
Right.
It's just that on the back side of the hill where the grade is higher, you're only going to see 2 floors above grade.
Correct.
Right.
For the 3-story.
Well, with a 3-story
With a
building, you'll see 2
three-story
stories.
building, right.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm leaning towards the 3-story buildings.
I agree with the 3-story, I think it would be aesthetically more pleasing.
I think it would be also more expeditious for the applicant, as you don't have to go to the ZBA.
Yeah, I mean, we have an application pending. I could have just had the public hearing.
You mentioned that
You said-
your applicant is looking to move, so.
Right, well, he's just looking for direction, 3 or 4 stories.
Gotcha.
I think we're getting it.
Jeremy?
Well, I actually think that the 4-story is a mitigation of the impact that a 3-story building would create. And candidly, I think just strictly from a visual perspective, the massing of the 3-story building is significant. I realize we're thinking vertically, but the massing of the building horizontally is, based on the renderings, is pretty significant. So I think the 4-story version is a better mitigation.
Well,
So help me out here. What's driving the mess is this need or this plan for 332 units? What if there were 3 stories and there were not 332 units? Why is that the magic number?
Because that's the project proposal.
It's also, it's what makes the hotel, or that's what the hotel chains want, is, it doesn't make sense to have a building smaller than 100 rooms, because it's just economically does not make sense for them.
I had written a while ago, probably going back 2 years, that based upon my look at the internet, which is questionable, within a 10-mile radius of the site, there were 2,200 hotel units. And I believe it was Croakley was your real estate consultant, commercial real estate consultant.
Coakley Williams, yeah.
Indicated that within the vicinity of the site, the average occupancy was 55%. I am just not the comments of the Orange County because it was her opinion, unsupported by, she said that there's a need.
Steve Rose.
It was Steve or Amanda, one
It
of them.
was Amanda
both.
Dana, he said it.
Oh, he also said
Yeah,
it as well.
I think they both submitted letters.
And yes, I am questioning the basis for their conclusion. That given what seems to be an abundance of units of hotel units.
Have you tried to
And
get a
this was,
hotel on
this,
it?
by the way, was as of 2022. This was 2 years ago.
Well, I'd rather rely on the experts as opposed to internet. We've got 2 experts from the county that have said there's a need for a hotel. They've submitted letters. The issue in my mind was resolved when they submitted those letters. If you still question it, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, I'm asking, is this part of your business model that you must have 332 units?
I think she just explained, if you're gonna build a hotel, it has to have a minimum amount of units to make economical sense.
Well, where I end up on this issue is that I'm unpersuaded that there's a need for that many units, which is driving, in fact, the greater disturbance. If you have 3 stories and fewer units, you have less disturbance. I have raised this issue before. I don't know how the board feels about it, but the rationale offered up in the section, Lee, that you were speaking to about the need, Science of the Soul, which has, I believe, 9 events a year, a 3-day national event, and 2 regional events of 3 days each. Amy's Kitchen, which may or may not happen, and Legoland, which does have a hotel on site. It may generate more, and there may be other projects that generate more, but this is...
Certainly their hotel's going to generate more because they're looking to expand as well because they're selling out their hotel. So, and plus they're looking at expanding the park at some point too. So there's going to be a demand as time goes on for additional rooms.
I really feel that you get companies like this that look to build hotels. I'm sure they've done their homework regarding the need, because they're not going to go out and spend a lot of money to develop a building and not have a need because they go out of business, especially a franchise, right? So I'm assuming somebody's done some homework and there's a need out there for the building. So I don't know if
I can speak personally.
Logically, I would say David.
One particular project I was personally involved in, the hotel that was put up, I was helping somebody out with their planning board, and the hotel evolved from 35 rooms basically to 100. It was the only way to get any of the reputable, recognized names to want to come in and take possession or, you know, management of that particular hotel, lease it, whatever the arrangements were. They did not want it with less rooms than 100. I'm not sure what companies you're looking at or proposing, you know, it's going to be one of these majors that are coming in, but, you know, if it is intended to be one of these recognized, nationally recognized names, they do look for a minimum number of rooms and certain appointments within the hotel as far as being in their directory, you know, if they're going to be
Yes.
carrying their name. The question I have on the 3-story, and it goes back to what I was saying before. If you look at the map, 0-100 that was done, showing the layout of what the 3 hotels and 2 restaurants look like, the piece that juts out from the main part of the hotel is surrounded by parking all the way around. And I was just wondering, is that where we need that parking? Is there no longer a portico for the cars to drive underneath as far as registering in inclement weather, or?
No, there's still a
Oh,
portico.
I'm not seeing that on the drawing, that's what, I don't know if that's
It's
beyond it, or?
it's a hidden line. It's a dashed line, so it's not as visible, but it is still there.
Can I borrow your glasses? I'm not seeing it. You know,
You can see it on here.
well,
It's right here.
so it's on the backside.
It's on the,
So they're all on the.
Yeah, it's on the front.
Because the
Yeah,
original
yeah,
design, it
it's
looked like
not
they were
on
on
the-
the other side.
Right, no, it's
So you
still on
turned
the
it.
front side.
Okay, so driving around, so there's no
And they have-
parking, there's no parking on the side that they register. To go, once they register, they gotta take the cars and go around to the back side of
Correct,
each of the hotels.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay, that's different. Okay.
Well, just for Hotel 1.
Yeah,
Hotel
not each
2
of-
still
right.
has parking on the front side.
And so does
back.
Hotel 3.
Yes.
Yeah, but Hotel 2
Still has the portico.
still has the,
Yes.
where you sign in on the back side, where the parallel rows of parking.
Where those two,
Yeah.
yeah, still there.
Yeah. Okay.
That
Now,
answer your question?
I just thought that the main entrance would,
was the overhang.
would be where the overhang is, would be on the opposite side of the hotel, so when you walk out of the main part of the hotel, you could walk right to the restaurants or right to the bulk of the parking area, as
But-
opposed to going around the whole
But you're
building.
entering on the second floor from the back, so you can't do that. You have to have it on the front, because that's where the
floor.
lobby's on the first floor.
Right. But like for instance, okay, that would apply to,
Hotel 1 and Hotel 2, it has to be on that side, because that's the side that's,
Ground level.
correct.
so it's higher in the parking area in
Yes.
front of the restaurant,
Yeah,
that area, okay.
yes, it's
Okay.
higher, so you'd come in
Okay.
on the second floor instead of on the ground floor.
Okay.
You can see it a little bit better on the architecturals. I was just looking at it with Sean on page 2 of L1. Okay, that's
Yeah,
page 3.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you can see the,
That's page 3.
Yeah, but no, I'm looking at the side that's on the lower level, and that has the drive-through, on
Yeah,
the
so this
side
is
where you have
the-
where you have
this
the
is
3
the-
floors, right,
right, so this is the ground floor
Right.
level, and then this is the
okay,
the T that sticks out the back.
okay,
Yeah.
living color. So, let me just see something. Is there an opportunity, when the people come out of Hotel 2, and they're coming out, or going in from that back side, if they want to go to the restaurant, that's between Hotel 1 and Hotel 2, they have to walk around, can they go through the hotel and come out through that stub? How does that work?
They would have to go up a floor, right?
They have to go up a floor and then out, but they could go out the other side.
They could go out
The
that
upstairs,
backside,
okay.
yes.
Different, okay. So it sounds like, with the exception of Phil, who was undetermined, and Jeremy, who wants a 4-story, or feels that's the best, it looks like we have a consensus for a
For the
3-story.
3-story. Okay, so I do have to make some tweaks to make it for the 3-story. I said that last meeting, I didn't know which way you're going, so I can't put those tweaks in without it. But, so that the next meeting in 2 weeks, when you'll get this, is only about that issue. Does anybody else have any more changes? I know you've seen it like 14 times.
I just want to ask the board, are you comfortable with the sentence that you began this discussion with? And that sentence is, the need for the additional hotel units was demonstrated by 3 significant projects located in the vicinity that will attract visitors and tourists to the area. Legoland, Amy's Kitchen, and Science of the Soul.
I would probably word it as projects including those 3, as opposed to exclusively those 3.
By way of example.
Right.
Yeah.
The need for additional hotel units was demonstrated by significant projects located in the vicinity that will attract tourists and visitors, whatever, blah, 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 to the area, comma, including, but not limited to, Legoland, Amy's Kitchen, and Science of the Soul. So I got rid of the number 3 and I just, okay, so for the next version, 2 weeks. Just need that. Gonna be on every time till it's done. I'm gonna accept these changes that we talked about tonight and that I sent you previously, and then any additional tweaks will be in the red line, so that you can see those, and it'll just highlight that it's gonna be the 3-story alternative that you looked at, and that's it. That's all I got. I thought something else was coming, and that's
That's
it.
it.
Good?
Do we need a motion for anything?
No, not yet.
Not this time.
Okay.
Two-
2 weeks.
2 weeks, no,
weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Are all 3 hotels 3 stories?
All
Now they are, yeah.
3 will be, yeah, all 3 will be 3 stories.
Yeah, I'm gonna save this in the right place too, so I don't
They
do
weren't
what I did
20
last
minutes
time.
ago.
That's all right, we got direction.
Yep.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
2 weeks is May 2nd.
Really?
Yeah,
And you weren't here for 2 hours.
true, thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, next item on the agenda.
Services are turning.
Thank you for your service.
Temporarily.
You missed
File
that.
a complaint.
Next item on the agenda is Healy Ford, 12-1-8.11. We have an application for a site plan site modifications associated with a customer drive-through drop-off an existing automobile dealership on 5.2 plus or minus acres along New York State Route 17M and 6.5 Station Road in an HC district with AQ6 and floodplain and ponding overlay districts. We have revised plans and a Part 2 EAF to consider this evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Justin Bates, Colliers Engineering and Design. I wanted to just take the board through a few updates since our last meeting, if that's all right?
Please.
Great. So, since the last presentation to the planning board, the end of last year, December, we have been before the zoning board of appeals. We were pursuing a side yard setback over on the east side here for the addition. 30 feet is required, 20.1 was provided, and we did get that variance granted from the zoning board.
Nope, not yet.
I'm sorry.
Seeker wasn't completed. They basically authorized the drafting of a decision that would be favorable for the applicant, but this board needs to complete seeker first.
Okay.
So we'll be looking to reaffirm that at a future date, so. I did meet Fire Chief Easop out on the site per one of Mr. Hoffman's prior comments to look at, what the proposed addition would be and circulation on the site. He provided the letter that we submitted to the board, stated sufficient access and positioning of his apparatus was achievable. So. We also provided an updated application or submission there, correspondence from O&R. We discussed how the applicant is looking to install a new transformer on the rear eastern side of the site here. It is serviced by overhead utility poles right now. Those would be coming down in favor of an underground service to the transformer. However, it was noted that a service line to the adjacent property to the east comes off of those same poles that would be coming down. And we provided correspondence from O&R that says that a separate independent service for the neighbor will be coming off of one of the poles along 17M.
Sure.
They were still, it wasn't identified yet which pole, but that's how that was going to be addressed. So with our updated submission, we provided our full site plan set. There was a modification to the addition that I just want to note to the board. So originally for the prior sketch site plan, we had basically the ability to stack three cars across, so 6 total, right, 3 and 3. And we had that ramp that came out the back of the building so they could get back down to grade of the parking area. Through working with the applicant and the architect, we ended up actually making the addition smaller from like the conditioned space. So there's 4 cars that can be stacked within the building. So we reduced the overall square footage of that conditioned space from 4,576 to 3,638, a little over 900 square foot reduction. And what will happen is that allowed us to make the ramp longer, decrease the slope on that ramp, and then also allow us to essentially maintain the full drive aisle that's in the back of the building right now. So the prior design, the ramp kind of encroached and we were narrowing it down to about 24 feet. We're over 30 feet now for that drive aisle and essentially stays the same. So I think it's just a cleaner use of the space and maintaining accessibility around it. We did also, there was a note about the prior application identified these spaces in front of the Ford dealer for inventory. We were going to do a conversion of those to regular spaces because to meet the parking code, it was noted that would require a variance. So they are staying as inventory, and we look to pick up what we needed in parking to meet the code with just transitioning some of these double inventory storage spaces to just regular parking.
While you're on the subject of the parking,
Yeah.
on the plan where you have your bulk table and your parking calculations,
Yep. Sheet
sheet
3.
3.
Yep.
We're stating that the building footprint for the Ford dealership is 21,946 feet, but in the parking, we're using 21,008 feet. Which is the correct number?
Lee, I think.
Which is?
I worked that out. I think it's if you look at the figure, it's 17,370 square feet existing, plus the additional square footage for the addition that's proposed right now.
That's correct. It's the total of the existing footprint and the addition.
I'm still losing you.
The addition is 3638, yes, that's correct, yeah. The overall addition is actually 4576, but there's that ramp area that the applicant discussed, it's 938. So the 4576 reduces down to 3638, and then you add that to 17370, I think you get the 21408. Yeah.
So that 21,946 on the bulk table is not correct?
21, where are you?
On the bulk table, which is building footprint, non-residential structures?
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. So that should be the 2100.
Okay, so 2100
Yeah, I'm
is
sorry.
what it should
Yep.
be. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's the combination of the addition and the existing footprint.
I think that mistake on both tables carry over from the last plan.
Okay, good, thank you.
And if we're making changes to the bulk table, you'll update the side yard setback from last time. At the time of the
Yeah,
plan.
I like to just keep it there, and then when we have it, it's not. And then the last thing, as part of our submission, there's a couple of notes I think from the county and Mr. Huffman about the lighting. We do have, dark sky fixtures mounted on the sides of the building just to light up the drive aisle and the rear spaces there. So that's within the site plan set as well.
Do you know, Justin, how many employees are on site full-time between the two dealerships?
24.
24. It's gonna be 24.
I mean, it's one parcel, one well for both buildings.
I know where you're going with this.
I know you do.
Yeah. It wasn't, this doesn't change.
Well, I'm not saying it changes it, I just
Oh,
didn't know
okay.
if it was ever picked up.
I don't have that number on the top of my head.
Okay. Sean?
Just to finish off that thought, I'm sure the applicant can provide that for you for your next meeting. As you heard, this was last before you in December 7th. At that time, you declared your intent to be secret lead agency, and you also determined this to be unlisted. As Kelly indicated, it's going to have to go back to the ZBA to do a secret issue, and we can discuss the schedule towards the end of your meeting with that. Applicant made a comprehensive submission. In addition to the revised plans, they also, as they indicated, provided you with correspondence from fire department, O&R, so that was very helpful. I think this evening they're going to be asking you to schedule a public hearing. Again, we can discuss the dates for that if you're ready to proceed with that. I just want to talk quickly about the design standards. This is in the HC zoning district. There's design standards. The code says for existing buildings, it's either to the extent practical, but the code also talks about not wanting to discourage an owner from improving their property. As such, the applicant asked you to reaffirm some of the determinations you made in connection with the 2021 application on this with regard to the Mitsubishi dealership conversion. Those include the placement of the parking behind the building or the placement of the building in front of the parking. They've asked for you to reaffirm that would not be required because it would discourage them to become improving. Also, in connection with the bike path and the sidewalk, I know the board in 2021 had a large discussion about providing a sidewalk and ultimately determined that it was impractical and would discourage the owner from improving the property. Outdoor storage, similarly, in 21 you determined that the storage on the site was orderly and attractive. You waived the screening requirement and you waived the 10% limitation. The applicant's looking for you to do that in connection with this application as well. In terms of the parking, I think maybe you missed one.
Yeah, there's one more over here there.
Okay, you're gonna
Yeah.
add one? Okay.
Yeah, yep.
The board had asked for identification of snow storage areas. The applicant did address snow in their resubmission, but they didn't show you those areas. I don't know if you want to actually see on the plan designated snow storage areas. And then lastly, I had suggested that even though they've gotten correspondence from the fire department, that Frank take a look at it under the fire code, and if there's any requirements for fire lanes or anything like that.
As far as the snow storage area, I don't see that it's absolutely necessary to show it, other than the fact that we don't want it to be in a fire zone or fire lane. It's not going to impact their well location, the wells inside the building.
Okay.
So, for their own traffic flow around the building, that's something they would be dealing with. I'd be more concerned as far as not blocking emergency access around the building, if we need to.
The reason I bring it up, Mr. Chairman, is that
Present
at your meeting in December, the board discussed snow and snow storage. The applicants indicated really that this actually is going to help them, I think, with snow removal because there's less parking lot and
Yes.
more roof.
That was
But
the.
I don't know if that really answers the question that you had asked. So if you want to see something, then now's the time to ask for it.
There was a, hold on a second.
In the rear of the site.
Yes, we don't want it right on top of that either.
No, I didn't think so.
I think it would be a good idea to show it. There's no reason not to show it.
We could do that. Also, just, I think we noted at that last meeting too, that if there is an abundance, they remove it from the site. They contact contractors to do that, so.
Is that it?
That's all.
Okay, so Kelly, as far as reaffirming, well, first of all, we have to assume lead agency.
You have to assume lead agency.
Would that be the first thing we do?
Yes.
So I would need a motion.
Make the motion.
Phil, second by Eric, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay.
Okay.
Now, all the reaffirmations.
For the findings, what I'll do for the findings that go in your resolution, I'll put them in a resolution in bold italics. You won't need to read them, you can just reaffirm them.
Okay.
But the next thing is the FEAF Part 2. So I provided the board with an FEAF Part 2. And per my typical practice, if there's a there's an arrow on the right-hand side, that means there's a small impact rather than no impact. So I'll just go over this quickly. The proposed action may involve construction on land where depth to water table is less than 3 feet. The proposed action may involve construction on slopes of 15% or greater. The proposed action may involve construction on land where bedrock is exposed or generally within 5 feet of the existing ground surface. Those were all proposed. Also remember, this is for the entire property, not just this little area. Impact on geological features was no. Impact on surface water was yes, although I may not have checked that off for you, but it's a yes. And D and I were small impacts. The proposed action may involve construction within or adjoining a freshwater or tidal wetland or in the bed or banks of any other. Proposed action may affect the water quality of any water bodies within or downstream of the site of the proposed action. Impact on groundwater was no. Impact on flooding was no. Impacts on air was no. Impact on plants and animals was no. Impact on agricultural resources was no. Impact on aesthetic resources was no. Impact on historic and archaeological resources. So I put yes with a small impact next to A. However, the applicants responded no, and the EAF mapper had no for one of them, and then the other one was the no digital data was available. So I did ask the applicant just to reach out to SHPO for the CRIS system, but we did not notice SHPO as an involved agency because really the answer is no. So if you get a response back, that's great, but this could be no. Impact on open space and recreation was no. Impact on critical environmental area was no. Impact on transportation was no. Impact on energy was no. Impact on noise, odor, and light was yes, with 2 potentially small impacts that the proposed action may produce sound above noise levels established by local regulation, temporary during construction. And the proposed action may result in light shining onto adjoining properties, and the applicant has included those light fixtures and made a comment about that earlier. Impact on human health was no. Consistency with community plans was yes, which is actually no. So proposed action is inconsistent with local land use plans or zoning regulations was a moderate to large impact, and that's because they're seeking a variance from the zoning board.
If they do get the variance, is it consistent then?
Then it becomes consistent because it basically changes that regulation. Consistency with community character was no, which means yes. So I don't know if anybody had any questions or wanted to discuss those.
No questions.
Okay, could you move to, I'll change the SHPO response to no, and if we get something, then I'll include it.
Okay.
Could I have a motion to adopt the FEAF Part 2?
I make the motion.
Seamus, second by?
I'll second.
Diana, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Okay, can I have a motion to then authorize the drafting of a negative declaration?
Could I have said motion?
So moved.
Phil, second by?
I'll second.
Marty, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Okay, and then Sean's gonna talk to you about your meetings to see if this is ready for a public hearing.
So if the board would like, what we were discussing today was perhaps to schedule a public hearing in the neg deck for your May 2nd meeting. Kelly confirmed that there's enough time for a notice. And the reason we were trying to get this on your meeting of the 2nd is because ZBA meets on the 7th. So if you would to adopt a negative declaration that evening, the ZBA could then take action, and then they're back to you at a point afterwards for site plan, to conclude site plan review. So we're trying to get them back to the ZBA as the driver.
Need a motion for that?
Yes, so you need a motion to schedule the public hearing for
For
May
that date.
2nd. Yeah.
Do I have that motion?
I make the motion.
Seamus, second by?
I'll second.
Diana, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Neil?
Just two comments really on the site plan. One is, I think if we're gonna say that there's no need or that would prevent the applicant from developing his property because of sidewalks, I think we have to have some documentation of that. Just saying that we feel that way doesn't, I think, adequately cover us for saying, hey, is there a legitimate reason why they shouldn't be doing it? Or wouldn't develop the property if we had to make them do the sidewalk. Second thing is, there's been a number of complaints and a number of times that that cars have been unloaded on the street, right on the middle there where, of 17M actually, on that median where it's striped, and then also on the shoulder. That may or may not be an enforcement issue for the police, but it certainly is a negligence issue if there is no way for those trucks to get off the road and onto the property. If there's a way for them to get on the property and they choose not to do it, that's an enforcement issue. But if there's no way for them to unload the trucks on the property, that's a site plan issue, I think.
Can I respond to that?
Please.
Sure. So that, Mr. Howland did grab me, I think, after the ZBA meeting and did mention, I think it actually happened that day, ironically, that someone was doing that. So I did speak to the applicant. Any car carriers that are delivering cars to the facility is directed to go to their 6.5 station road facility to offload. This may have been a new driver. It's not supposed to be in every occurrence. Their operation is supposed to be directed over to the facility to off-road so that they are not, creating a safety hazard, of course.
Have the drivers been instructed by
I
Healy?
was told that they reiterate that to whomever is the service delivering the cars. So
Neil?
Just today, and it has nothing to do with car carriers, but it has to do with their landscapers were parked on the shoulder the whole time they were parked, mowing the grass. Maybe we need to have no parking signs put up there, whatever. But obviously, it's a
Well, that's a
recurring.
state road. That's a state road, though. They would have to put the signs in.
Sure, but maybe we should go to the state and say, hey, you think maybe it's appropriate?
Make some
Check with the
recommendation.
town board, for the town board to send a letter.
Whatever. I think it's a safety issue right now.
Thanks, Neil.
Thank you.
Did you have anything, Giovanni?
I had nothing.
Okay. So, Kelly,
I have nothing further for this.
do you have anything else for us, Justin?
just to confirm, so we are,
You're on the agenda for May 2nd for a public hearing.
great, so we'll get the notice
And
for
the
that,
negative,
and then
yeah.
10 days is that?
No,
Oh, fine, okay.
you're fine, that's why we scheduled it.
Great, okay.
Where were you looking for justification for a bike path or a walking path?
Well, I think the way it reads, and I can't tell you off the top of my head exactly, but I think it reads that we can waive the requirement for a sidewalk or a bike path if that would discourage the applicant from developing his property. I have a tough time believing that having to put in a sidewalk or a bike path right there is a cause for him to say, no, I won't.
Where's the right path?
Pardon?
What location?
Along 17M. And it could even.
Want a bike path along 17M?
Maybe a sidewalk, because I've heard that people from Milmar are walking over to go to the convenience store next door to get lunch sometimes.
I think you talked about it in Milmar, and the board found that,
You were talking about on Milmar's property above the guardrail, and right. But
right,
we're not talking, now we're talking about Healy's property.
so.
Because apparently people are walking across Healy's property to get to that convenience store.
Well, what the code says, or what your prior finding on this was the planning board found that due to the location of the existing structure, existing and proposed improvements, and the circulation of property for employees and customers, compliance with the requirement in section 9714 D1B regarding building placement would discourage the applicant from improving the property. The planning board also finds that compliance with the requirement in section 9714 D6 regarding the minimum distance between curb cuts and section 9714 D3A for a bike path and or sidewalk to be constructed within the landscape buffer would impose an unnecessary economic hardship on the applicant and would discourage the applicant from improving the property. Furthermore, no changes are proposed to the curb cuts at this time. As a result of the above, the applicant need not comply with the provisions of the above cited code section. That was what you previously said, which is in compliance with the standards for the finding.
That was for the Lincoln dealership?
Yes.
In 21. So it's consistent with what the code allows you to use as a standard for making that determination.
The board?
So what are you looking for, Neil? A recitation of this?
So it would have to be in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somehow I think we have to justify the fact that we're gonna say
I
that
think that
because,
justifies it.
because I'm not sure it does. I'm not sure it's up there to say, this is why, what we're basing this on.
It would almost have to be a letter, what you're saying is a letter from the applicant saying if we have to build a sidewalk or walkway, we're not doing improvement.
Or just, yeah, something like that, or for some other reason why it's absolutely crazy. And then, look, I think that if you look at the ERB's minutes, I think they almost made that justification. However, I think we should have that in the record.
The applicant can provide a letter.
I was gonna say, if that's what the board does, we'll have. the
Just what's in your pen.
Right, yes, I'm sorry.
Good.
So unless you have anything else for us, Justin, we'll see you on the 2nd.
Actually, just one last question. So we'll have the public hearing. I'd like to just, collect any input, from anybody that comes out for the public hearing and provide, kind of a final comprehensive updated submission
Right.
after the public hearing.
The
Is
public
board
hearing
okay
will be
with that?
based on these plans.
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
no changes beforehand. We don't want any additional
Good.
plans.
Okay, so we're on the same page.
It
Exactly.
is possible, depending on the comments received from the board, comments received from the public hearing, it is possible that the board could determine that those comments are small and issue a conditional approval, subject to revising the plan to address any comments.
Yeah, that's
So
what.
we'll consider that the night of the public hearing.
Yeah,
Right.
understood. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Earl.
So understand, so Phil's requesting putting those.
Yeah, it could.
I'm actually worried, I'm really worried about
It's going to constitute emergency response. This one.
Sean,
So you obviously have that public hearing that we just discussed.
next deck and public hearing.
Make that a public hearing, you have Goshen Hospitality is coming back with a very narrow discussion on the findings that Kelly went over. You received new plans from the pet crematorium, and also 920 Associates is coming back. And I do have one question from that before you. So to recap, that's Healy Public Hearing, Hospitality Finding, Pet Crematorium, and 920 Associates.
what's 920?
It's a plumber, remember the plumber on 17A?
And you have to get the variances, never got the variances. You already authorized drafting the decision, but I can't.
So, Lakestar Solar, that's the one out on 94. You had at your last meeting authorized us to have discussions with them, which we did during today's staff meeting. One of the comments they received, and it may have been my comment, was that they showed a plan that had all these photo locations, but they only provided you with like 6 of the 18. So, we had asked that they provide those original. They had asked if they could just submit digital version of them rather than hard copy. They are very into saving trees.
Well, I'm okay with that now.
Everyone's got a computer.
Okay, that's fine, I just.
Except you.
We can zoom in.
Well, I get my email to my personal email, so I'll still see it.
All right, that's all.
Anything else from the board? Not, can I have a motion then to close the meeting?
Place a motion.
Eric, second by Diana, all in favor, say
I am always first.
I wrote Diana first.
Thank you.
I got
Eric should know better.
You know, that's the one
I got you.
voice I know which is when it's not. I mean, I do know which